It's cold, and I'm checking on the status of my spinach and lettuce because of the cold and because of the 5 inches of snow I got last night. It's 20 degrees right now, and this is the high temperature for the day. 48 hours ago, it was sunny and 70 degrees. And I really don't remember the last time we had such a big temperature change in such a short period with snow. But I don't have to remember it, because by documenting what happened today, I can compare today to all of the future days and past days by just keeping a record. Join me as I talk about the importance of keeping a garden journal. Hi, I'm GardenerScott, and I've moved inside because it's just too darn cold and snowy outside. In fact, it was actually a record-setting snowfall for this date. I'm looking at a garden journal that I started back in 2003, and it shows that year my garden had its first freeze on October 14th. Which corresponds pretty closely to what happened this year. But on October 15th, I actually planted some strawberries and mulched them with pine needles. And then the next day, I raked up 9 more bags of pine needles. I don't remember any of that happening in that year so long ago. In fact, I've forgotten more about gardening than I think I've remembered. But that's where garden journals can come in, because it can help us remember some of those things that may have been important. One of the things that I note from April 4th is that was when I had my last class in the Master Gardener program. Shortly after that, I was certified. Garden journals can keep track of all different aspects of your garden. And today I'll be covering 15 different things that I think you probably should keep track of in a garden journal, and give you ideas of how to document all of the things that are happening in your garden. I think a lot of us learn best through experience. It's all those failures and successes that we have in our life. And documenting those in a garden journal can really lead to more successes than failures. How you do it really doesn't matter, but I'm going to give you some ideas and some examples. This garden journal that I used back in 2003 and 2004 really met my needs for that time. Nowadays, I find that I do most of my journaling on a pad of paper. I'll have something in mind when I'm out in the garden and I want to make sure that I keep track of it, but by the time I get inside to write in a journal, I'll often forget what it was I wanted to write down. But when I'm sitting in my chair on the computer or watching TV, I might have that thought, and I can jot it down on this pad of paper that I have nearby. If you're better than that, you might actually go with a published garden journal, like some of these examples that I have, and I'll put some links below. Here's a nice big one, and it's got plenty of room for keeping notes, acknowledging your chores, plant profiles, and a calendar. This one is even better still. It's got really big pages with lots of room for keeping notes and isn't so structured. It actually would allow you to design it however you want. Whether it's one of these store-bought journals or just a pad of paper, here's some ideas of what it should include. The first thing that you should definitely journal, one of the most important, is information about your plants. In a book like this, it actually has pages. Each page represents a single plant, and you can put its common name, its botanical name, and then lots of notes about it. Where did you buy it? Where did you plant it? Is it in a pot or is it in soil? How did you take care of it? How well did it grow? When did it bloom? All of those kind of things can be kept track of on a single page per plant. My method of using a pad works well for some aspects of gardening, but when it comes to keeping track of your plants, I really think a specific journal works best. Another thing to keep track of are important dates. Now, I already talked about the first frost date. We'll also keep track of the last frost date. And from year to year, you might notice a changing pattern. That influences when you start your seeds indoors. We'll keep track of the dates for the specific plants and when you need to start those seeds. It differs because if you've got microclimates in your garden, you're going to be wanting to put plants in at different times. Keep track of all of those dates. I've already touched on it, but definitely keep track of the weather conditions in your garden. Few other factors have such a big impact on our plants. So keep track of what happens, when it happens, and how severe or how good an event might be. Keep track of gardening techniques, how you do things. If you read about something or see a video about something and you determine that you want to try it next year, well, it's great to have a place to write down all of those ideas so that you don't forget about that wonderful new way of doing things. And then you analyze and you evaluate and you have in that same section what works so you can do it again. And if you practice crop rotation, well, then definitely have a section where you can keep track of the plants and the beds and the scheduled planting of each of those so that your crop rotation plan is successful. If you use fertilizer, well, then you can have a section on fertilization. It's probably going to be a broad area of how you practice fertilization, what worked and what didn't, because you can also include that kind of information on your plant page. But if you've got great successes or ideas of what to try next year, if you've got a fertilizer section, now you can go right to it at the beginning of the growing season. And also at the beginning of the season, I use my section on seeds quite a bit. That's where I identify what seeds I'm going to sow in that season and where I bought the seed and how much it cost and the condition of it when it arrived. And then also I can track germination rates and general success with the seeds, including when I start them under the lights. And I like to have a section on insects. What did I encounter in the growing season? Was it a beneficial insect or a detrimental insect? How did I deal with it? Was it successful or not? And then by looking at the patterns of the insects, I can get a really good idea if my general insect control philosophy is working or not. I also like to include garden milestones, like that date when I finished the Master Gardener program. I'll include the dates when I build beds, when I install beds, when I put in trellises, all of the primary structures, and all those important things that happen in a garden, like big mulching projects. That helps me keep track of what I've done and what I still have to do, and also helps me realize just how long things last before I need to replace them. And to round out the top 10, I like to have a separate section for my successes and my failures. Now, I have been including that information along the way in some of those other categories, but I like to have a specific section of the big things. What definitely worked that I will definitely do again, and what didn't work to make sure that I don't repeat it. And that's an important section, because if I don't write it down, inevitably I will repeat a failure. And that leads into a plan for next year. This is a section that I'll usually use my pad for. Come up with an idea and then transfer it to the journal so that I have a list of the things that I want to do the next year, based on all of the other categories and all of my analysis and evaluation within the garden journal. Have you ever had a flower blooming in your garden or a plant growing and you just can't remember the name of it? That happens to me all the time. A lot of these journals will have graph pages where you can actually sketch out your garden and include where the plants are and what they're called so that you never have that problem again. And I also like to include the plant tags in my journal. Some of the better journals actually have sliding pockets to put things like plant tags, because the garden sketch tells me where it is and what it is. Well, with a plant tag, I can actually have the specific information that was included with the plant when I put it in the ground. And I also like to do before and after photos of many sections of my garden. There's another section for the journal to include photos of the plants at different phases, to include pretty flowers and any other thing that you might want to document. And the last thing that's on my list today for how to use a garden journal is to use it as a place to keep your plant receipts. Many nurseries will have a policy that if your plant dies within the first year, all you have to do is bring it back with a receipt and they'll replace it. Well, what better place to keep your receipts than in one of those pockets of your gardening journal? Those are 15 ideas of what I think should be included in a gardening journal and how I use them. I also met with my gardening friend Steve to get some thoughts of how he uses his journal, because he's been doing it for quite a while. So let me share that with you now.
Well, for me, one of the greatest things about this journal is the fact that I can look back in time and decide when to start seeds or when not to start seeds. Because I grow my own seeds and I like to get things started early for our climate so that I can put plants out fully grown, ready to bloom and produce vegetables that way. In addition, it's just fun to see what the weather changes over a period of years. This is a 10-year journal, and I've been doing this since like 2011, and I'll probably continue to do it eternally, just because of the fact that it's becoming more useful and very, very useful for me. Okay, well, number one, it's got all kinds of record information, planting records and things like that. Like here's an example. I can plan ahead of time what I want to garden, what I want to put in the garden itself. And so when you're keeping track of that, it's kind of a roadmap, if you will. Yeah. This actually started in 2011, and there's entries for 2013, 14, and 15. And in several places, for example, I'll put the date. Some of these are later in time. This is a March 1st entry. Things like when I ordered seeds in the earlier part of the year, they came in, or my seeds didn't arrive, or I have to order this week. Looking at seed catalogs, ordering seeds for next summer. That's the kind of stuff that's in it. As I look through it, and they've got a tab in here to kind of keep track, it's an all-year thing, so you don't have to do much in the summer when you're all busy in the garden. But as we approach through the winter, as we're cleaning up the garden and things of that nature, it's really good for me to look back and say, well, here's the temperature. Like yesterday it was cold and windy. Today it's 70 degrees and it's beautiful out here. Now, years from now, I wouldn't know that if I didn't look back and actually see that kind of information. So it's a guide, and again, it's a historical type guide. In my case, things that are good and things that fail in gardening are documented, and so then I won't repeat things that I don't need to repeat. I've learned a lot of things about gardening, and one of the things that I did learn is that PVC does not hold up in this weather, in this environment. It did when I used to live in South Carolina because it was a very humid climate. But here in Colorado, I started with hoop houses that were made out of PVC, and within a year they cracked and split, and so I kind of gave up on that. My hoop houses now have metal EMT, as it's called, electromechanical tubing, and I bent them with some custom jigs that I built, and they've lasted since I've built them, and it's been a good almost 8 years that they've been installed, so real good. I wouldn't have known the PVC didn't work if I didn't have a historical note to tell me to use something different if I want to cover my raised beds. And if I wanted to do something different, I would write it down and then know in the future that I wouldn't have to repeat myself. That's really the biggest thing. I would say just start. It's kind of like the longest journey, but the longest journey can get going by the first step that you make. So if you just start simply, put down anything. It's a thought process that if you're into gardening and you really want to, go forward and learn things about gardening, document it, because the more that you document it, the better that you can actually read from your document and get historical information about what works and what doesn't work. I think one of the best things is having a journal, period. And then, making sure that you at least put something in. Even if it's a beautiful day outside and you decide to go for a walk, just put down that it was a beautiful day out and note the temperature. I think one of the things that I like to look back on is to find out what the temperature was on a certain day on a certain year, because I don't keep track of that kind of stuff. And I don't want to have to go to the weather site, and find out historically what was the weather back there. This is my own personal little detail of that kind of information. So it's kind of good.
Both Steve and I obviously recommend gardening journals, and it helps explain a lot of the success that we've had. I'm guessing if you know an experienced and successful gardener, if you were to ask them, they would probably tell you that they have a gardening journal too. You don't have to write everything down. You can do this electronically. And I have a lot of spreadsheets that shows the successes and the failures that I have in my garden. And the photos of the before and after and every other aspect of my garden, I keep those on my computer as well. How you do it is up to you, but I highly recommend that you do it. Keep a gardening journal. And if you have any questions about this, please let me know. If you'd like to see more of these gardening videos, well then subscribe to the GardenerScott channel and be sure to click on the bell so you know when new videos are coming out. If you like this video, well, you can give me a thumbs up and share it. I'm GardenerScott. Enjoy gardening.